Hi, this is Don Kost, and I'm the TME for the Valor division of Siemens. In this video, I'm going to discuss some of the new functionality that was added to the 2504 release of Valor NPI. New in this release is the ability to check linear trench vias for construction and spacing issues. Valor NPI now supports this new technology. Linear trench vias are advanced technology in PCB design. The technology is like the dual Damascene process used in substrate design. Vias designed as trenches serve multiple purposes. They reduce DC resistance by increasing the cross-sectional area of the copper. They provide localized ground shielding for sensitive signals, and they act as thermal heat sinks embedded within the board and offer mechanical reinforcement around mounting holes. A trench via is considered a trench made from via drill slots and multi-drill vias with the attribute drill equals via and a via type of laser. It is typically from one layer to an adjacent layer, but can span multiple layers, but never all the way through the board, such as a plated through slot. Trench vias can be on both internal and external layers. In the HDI PCB process, boards with cores, trench vias can only be on the outer layer of the core or on buildup layers, any layer with a laser via. Typically, this excludes inner core layers. Trench vias are vertical interconnects or pathways that connect different layers of metal traces within the printed circuit board. The process involves etching trenches or cavities in the dielectric layer, which serve as the pathways for the metal interconnects. The HDI fab process uses overlapping laser drills to create the trench. These trenches are then filled with a conductive material, typically through an electroplating process, to form the metal interconnects. Valor NPI 2504 provides 7 new sets of checks to report trench via construction and spacing issues. There are 2 checks for illegal and acute angles. There is a check to report the gap between endpoints of a connected line in a linear trench via that exceed the permitted overlap distance. There is a check to make sure that there are no duplicated holes in the trench via. There are 2 checks looking at a trench via to another trench via. One is for the same net trench via, and one is for the different net trench vias. And finally, there is a check to check the distance between a trench via and a regular via. So let's take a look at some of the results. So the first result we'll look at is a trench via to a laser via. There is also a check to a drilled via. The values can be different for both. This next check is looking at the spacing of a trench via to a trench via of the same net. The next check looks at the spacing between trench vias, but for different nets. This check looks for structural violations in the trench via. In this case, we have more than 2 endpoints. Trench vias that are flagged as illegal will not be reported for any other constraints. The next check looks at illegal angles in the trench via. There is a configuration table that lists the acceptable angles. If an angle is found that doesn't match any of the listed angles, it is reported here. And this final check will report the gap between endpoints of a connected lines in a trench via that exceed the permitted value. We can see that if we go into shadow mode. So that's a quick look at the new linear trench via checks that were added in 2504.